Hi, everyone. It is still April 3rd, 2021. I wanted to post a video on a whole other subject, but looking at the news, you can't get away from Georgia, the voting law, the boycotts, the outrageous things that are being said about Georgia, and their governor signing into law a voting rights bill that is being so grossly mischaracterized by the Democrats. I'm okay. Democrats, I want to say to every one of you, if you are not standing up, speaking out about the lies that your party is speaking, you are complicit with these sick, twisted government officials. One happens to be in the White House. You are a part of it. I was a Democrat for decades, always voted Democrat, believed the horse shit that I was fed, that the Democrats, they're the good party. They're the party that stands for minorities. They're the party that stands for picking people up. They're the party that is for the underdog. And it was all bullshit. The gaslighting that's taking place right now is so repulsive that I have to post a video. Okay. Wow. Wow is all I can say. Okay. I'm speechless. It is so obvious that Biden is lying, that mainstream media is lying. People have come out and said, lying, and they have misrepresented the bill. And now Georgia is being hit hard by boycotts, and they're going to feel it economically based on lies. It's all lies. It's all lies. It's all gaslighting. It's so sick and twisted that I don't even want to be in this country anymore. Mainstream media reporters, sick and twisted, mentally ill. Those in the Democratic Party are so psychotic and so out for their own interests. This is all the Democrats want to usurp the state's power and the state's constitutional right to handle their elections the way they want to. They want to federalize the election laws. They want to federalize them. That's what this is about. But to grossly lie about a bill that was signed into law in Georgia, to flat out lie, and then you're actually going to evoke Jim Crow? This is beyond sane. This is so sick. This is so insane that we have to live this. Yes, I absolutely put the responsibility on the Democrats, the ordinary Democrats. You have to get control of your sick, twisted party. What you are doing could not be more wrong. What you are doing could not be more immoral. What you are doing is destroying this country.
What I'm worried about is how un-American this whole initiative is. It's sick. It's sick. Deciding in some states that you cannot bring water to people standing in line, waiting to vote. Deciding that you're going to end voting at 5 o'clock when working people are just getting off work. Deciding that there will be no absentee ballots under the most rigid circumstances. It's all designed, and I'm going to spend my time doing three things. One, trying to figure out how to pass the legislation passed by the House, number one. Number two, educating the American public. The Republican voters I know find this despicable. Republican voters. The folks outside this White House. I'm not talking about the elected officials. I'm talking about voters. Voters. And so I'm convinced that we'll be able to stop this because it is the most pernicious thing. This makes Jim Crow look like Jim Eagle. I mean, this is gigantic, what they're trying to do. And it cannot be sustained. And do everything in my power, along with my friends in the House and the Senate, to keep that from becoming the law.
Is there anything else you can do about it besides passing legislation?
The answer is yes, but I'm not going to lay out a strategy in front of the whole world and you now.
Thanks for watching my YouTube channel, our YouTube channel, and thank you for lying to the American public for so long, for helping this country become the land of crazy. Thank you. What's his name? It's Holt or something? I cannot believe what this man is doing. I cannot believe that he actually equates that Georgia voting bill with Jim Crow. That bill is to protect the integrity of elections. And essentially, it requires an ID. An ID. Identification. That's it. And those Democrats are so cemented in not the truth, but being a team cheerleader, they won't even look into how this guy, he has such contempt for you because he lies. The whole thing is a lie. The whole thing is a lie. Okay, can Americans ever get to a point where they consider the truth really important? Could they? I don't think so. Because, the truth is, it's hard, it's demanding, and pulls people out of their comfort zone. Listen to the lies, Democrats. Just eat it all up. Now, I should say, I'm not a Republican. I'm not a Democrat. I walked away before. #walk away. But I didn't walk over to the Republican side. I took a step outside of what we all call the matrix. And I looked inside. And Republicans, well, we have one party. That's it. Republicans lie. They campaign. They lie. They come in to their office and they do, well, the opposite of what they stated in their campaigns, just like the Democrats. But you Democrats, you are so batshit crazy with your lies. It is astounding. It's shocking and repulsive. More than the Republicans. Oh, and they're corrupt, and yeah, they get their pockets padded, and But more than the Republicans, the Democrats are flat out destroying everything. All good. You have taken this country so down to walk the low road because you don't look into the truth. You believe you're liars. So do the Republicans. But there's something so sick and twisted about you Democrats that it's frightening. Biden, Trump, Republicans allowing Jim Crow to return May 4, 2019. Yeah, the Jim Crow card was going to be played, and it's being played now. He is such, oh my God. Oh, Jim Crow is sneaking back in. That's what he says in South Carolina. Ooh. Yeah, fear-mongering in South Carolina. Criticizing Republican efforts to adopt more stringent voting rules, including identification requirements. How dare you, Republicans? Okay. Oh, I literally feel sick to my stomach. This country is so far gone. The Jim Crow card, Democrats, well, this was back 2011.
Meantime, the head of the DNC is backing off a reference she made to Jim Crow laws. Representative Debbie Wasserman Schultz caught some flack after comparing voter ID laws supported by Republicans to Jim Crow laws. Jim Crow laws mandated separate public facilities, from schools to bathrooms, for black and white Americans. Wasserman Schultz now says she used the wrong analogy, but she still says she's worried proposed voter identification laws will limit voting access for African Americans and other minorities.
Yeah. Okay. Democratic lawyer Mark Elias under fire for suggesting Georgia voters will be unable to correctly identify their driver's license number. That's right. Democrats have used the recent Georgia election law as a rallying cry for federalizing elections by labeling the law, as described by President Biden, Jim Crow on steroids. Biden has been repeatedly called out for demonstrably false statements about the law. Elias has been arguing that the law is a barrier for black and minority voters. He is being denounced for a tweet where he suggested that Georgia voters could not be expected to be able to read. You want to talk? Who are the racists? And I'll get into that in a second. Oh, blacks, I guess, can't read their driver's license number correctly. Oh, my God. A statement that seemed to refer to minority voters who would be disproportionately impacted by such a requirement. The new law is such a barrier to voting by noting that the new Georgia law will require voters to submit ID to vote by mail. Oh my God. Jim Crow on steroids. If they use their driver's license, they need to provide the number. One of the two numbers below is correct. If they put the other, it will be rejected. He then includes an image of the driver's license in Georgia with two separate numbers, highlights, and asks, "Are you sure you would pick the right one?" Jim Crow on steroids. The numbers will be hopelessly confusing and thus effectively bar black voters from participating in elections. Oh, wow. Well, what's this? Come on, man. Biden again misrepresents Georgia election law while supporting state boycott. Okay. And this is Jonathan Turley's website. Jonathan Turley, a constitutional attorney, professor at Harvard, I believe, and I've always considered him a Democrat. But he writes about the truth. The truth. And if Democrats lie, he comes out and writes that. False statements of this guy, this sick, twisted, lying, gaslighting, manipulating psychopath. And Democrats eat it up. Jim Crow on steroids. Biden falsely claims that the law closes polling places earlier, a claim that even the Washington Post decried as false. Biden has not only repeated his earlier false claim, but added a new one in supporting a boycott of the state of Georgia by Major League Baseball, denying water under the law to people standing in line to vote. What is astonishing is that the media itself has fueled these lies, the false narrative, and it is being used as a claim to boycott the state. It is hard to imagine, and that's what he said, talking on ESPN, again declared the law Jim Crow on steroids, and said, I think that today's professional athletes are acting incredibly responsibly. You cannot act responsibly if you are basing your actions on a lie. I would strongly support them doing that. People look to them. They're leaders. They're leaders? Baseball players are leaders? Okay, that's what's scary in our country. But he said, imagine passing a law saying you cannot provide water or food for someone standing in line to vote. Come on. Or are you going to close a polling place at 5 o'clock when working people just get off? Come on, man. Well, Jonathan Turley says it is hard to imagine because it's not true. And the White House knows that it is not true. And all your mainstream media reporters have to do is do a little bit of maybe read the law, and you'll find out it is not true. If a president is going to accuse a state of passing a Jim Crow law, let alone supporting a boycott of that state, there is an expectation of a modicum of accuracy and fairness. Otherwise, it degrades not just the movement for voting rights, but the office of the presidency itself. But you know what's scary? What's scary is we now are living a time when people so don't care about the truth, and they'll just be pitted on their side, cheering for their sick, twisted, psychopathic leader. And that's why it's gotten to this point. That's why it's gotten so bad. Because Americans never put a stop to their sick, twisted politicians who lie to them all the time. They know that they lie. They know they lie. The politicians know that their constituents know they lie, but it just continues. indefinitely, only getting sicker and sicker, are we as a country, as a people. No morals, nothing, no foundation, nothing. Just these sick, creepy people who, well, we got to federalize. We got to federalize the election law, so we're going to come out strong and we're going to lie repeatedly. Yeah, just keep the lie going, keep the lie going, keep the lie going. Cement it in the head of the stupid Democrats. Get them out on the street. Because Georgia, oh my God, well, we require identification. Holy shit, this country is so far gone. It is so far, it's frightening. Even PolitiFact, even PolitiFact had to recognize that water actually can be given to voters. Even PolitiFact, even Washington Post had to, yeah, okay, he's lying. None of that has stopped the reckless rhetoric. Vanderbilt University professor Michael Eric Dyson joined MSNBC's host Joy Reid in pushing the false narrative. Lying, lying, keep the lie going. And what did he say? We've got to federalize the election laws. It's an agenda. And how is it that people are so sick and twisted themselves that they won't even look into the truth? This guy, Dyson, said these are the kind of people that would pass a law to keep Jesus from getting a cup of water while he's dying on the cross. Wow. Actually, if Jesus was voting from the cross, he would have ample water availability under the law, though it would seem a stronger case for absentee voting. The level of misrepresentation of these provisions in the media has been chilling. The narrative has overwhelmed the news on the factual basis of these claims. The ordinary people, Republicans and Democrats, you need to demand the truth. Otherwise, we're all going down the toilet. And you know what? We're going down the toilet and it ain't clean. We do deserve what we are getting. I'm sorry. Collectively, we deserve what we are getting. Another article. Washington Post gives Biden 4 Pinocchios for a statement on this election law. Even the Washington Post. He's lying. 4 Pinocchios. So, Major League Baseball, Coca-Cola, Delta Airlines condemn new state voting law. Who the hell cares what Coca-Cola thinks? Delta Airlines thinks. Oh, the corporate CEOs have to weigh in because we are no longer, and we haven't been for decades, a free, sovereign nation because it was taken over by corporations decades ago. Early 80s. I was very, very young, but I sure did notice, fascism seems to have seeped through. Corporations are who our representatives represent. They have not been representing the American people for decades. And Americans think that they actually do? Are you friggin' that crazy yourself? Boycott, boycott, boycott. Oh, Obama weighs in. Oh, very happy that the Baseball League is taking a stand against this horrendous election law. How dare you require ID, Georgia? Are you friggin' kidding me? Okay, well, what should I do first? Let's do this first.
Candice Owens is the host of Candice. We're happy to have her on tonight. Candice, do you have a government-issued ID? And if you do, how did you get it?
I'm so excited to announce to the world that I was actually able to secure government-issued ID because I am smarter than a fifth grader. And this is such the bigotry of low expectations. It's not even though, because the Democrats know that what they're saying is absolutely foolish, right? The idea that black Americans are wandering around like Neanderthals going, how do we do it? How did everybody do this? This would mean, Tucker, we've never been into a hotel room. We can't get hotel rooms. We can't rent a car. We can't buy a car. We can't buy liquor, cigarettes, all the things that require just a simple form of identification. That means black Americans don't even have a bank account, Tucker. Can you imagine? We're running around going, how do we do it? How do we do it? Because we can't Google DMV near me and get there and provide basic, pieces of education. It's so insulting. And it's funny because they don't think that people understand what they're doing. Democrat strategy is so simple. What do we want to accomplish? Anything that stands in our way, call it racist. And why do they call it racist? Because the truth here, Tucker, is they perceive black Americans as stupid and emotional. They view us to be low information. They want us to be their pawns. So if they call it racist, that means black Americans will go out and they'll go attack that thing that they called racist. Look at this bill. Look what Georgia's doing. It's racist. Now they want black Americans to be used like pawns to run out into the streets, to riot, to boycott, to scream and to yell, and to basically amplify whatever it is that the Democrats are trying to achieve. And at the end of the day, all that ever is power.
Well, I think that's about the best description I've heard in a while. But just because we're pretty literal on this show, if you really thought that there were millions of people who didn't have government IDs and somehow had no place to live and couldn't have a bank account or go to the store, if you really believe that, why wouldn't you start a program to help people get IDs? I mean, that might even be a program I would support. Like, I don't know, why not? Why not help people get IDs? Has that occurred to anyone?
Right, exactly, because they don't want people to have ideas that allows them to flood our system with votes, which is exactly what they're after. Again, it's all about power. And you have to appreciate this, by the way, Tucker, at the same time that everyone's talking about vaccination passports, they see no problem with that, right? Everyone must have a vaccine. We're going to start to instill vaccine passports. Last I checked, you need an ID to make a doctor's appointment, too. So I don't know. I'm not sure how black Americans are going to possibly be able to do that. I'm going to have to file and say, sorry, I'm black. I can't do it. I guess that's what I'm going to have to say.
Well, can you, and this is, I've never thought of this, so I don't know the answer, but can you get a vaccine without an ID?
I don't believe you're allowed to make a doctor's appointment without an identification. So I guess even asking people to get vaccines, Tucker, that's racist.
That's the Democratic Party. And it's true. Doctor's appointments, well, you need an ID. You need an ID. This man is a racist, and what really, look, when I took a look into the Democratic Party, it was hard. It was a hard hit to realize that I personally supported a party that they're the ones behind Jim Crow. They're the ones behind the Ku Klux Klan. They're the ones who opposed voting rights, any kind of rights for black Americans. The Democrats, not the Republicans. So what we are living is in a country with these sick people who are lying through their teeth, gaslighting the American people, rewriting history to make themselves look good because they have an agenda and they are destroying this country. You want to talk the social fabric, the moral fabric? Destroyed. And the Democrats are far more responsible for that destruction than the Republicans. This guy is such a sick liar. And The Intercept posted this video. Yeah, it's hard to face the truth, But if you refuse at this point to face the truth, you are absolutely, not only are you complicit, you are directly responsible for the destruction of this country. And you are directly responsible for any kind of riots that break out. Because that's what the Democrats want.
When I marched in the civil rights movement, I did not march with a 12-point program. I marched with tens of thousands of others to change attitudes. And we changed attitudes.
When I was 17 years old, like many of you, I participated in sit-ins to desegregate the restaurants and movie houses of Wilmington, Delaware. I came out of the civil rights movement. I was one of those guys that sat in and marched and all that stuff. During the 60s, I was, in fact, very concerned about the civil rights movement. I was not an activist. I worked at an all-black swimming pool in the east side of Wilmington, Delaware. I was involved in what they were thinking, what they were feeling. I was involved, but I was not out marching. I was not down in Selma. I was not anywhere else. I was a suburbanite kid who got a dose of exposure to what was happening to black Americans when I'm in my own city.
You know, when I was a teenager in Delaware, for real, I got involved in the civil rights movement. We have the 8th largest black population in America. Most people don't know that. And I'd go to 8 o'clock Mass, then I'd go to Reverend Herring's church where we'd meet in order to organize and figure where we were going to go, whether we were going to desegregate the Rialto movie theater or what we were going to do. I got my education for real in the black church. And that's not hyperbole, it's a fact. But I got my education, Reverend Doc, in the black church. Not a joke. Because when we used to get organized on Sundays to go out and desegregate movie theaters and things like that, we'd do it through the black church. I was no big shakes, Reverend, in the civil rights movement. I was just a kid. I got involved in desegregating movie theaters and helping, you may remember Reverend Moyer in Delaware and Herman Holloway organized voter registration drives, coming out of black churches on Sunday, figuring how we were going to move. In October, I was invited to the National Civil Rights Museum in Memphis to receive the Freedom Award. A thing when I sat in black churches in the east side of Wilmington getting ready to, and by the way, next to two Jewish rabbis, getting ready to go out and desegregate movie theaters in Delaware. I never, ever thought in my life I would be worthy of, and I'm still.
You're not worthy of it. You're just a despicable liar. That's all you are. Despicable liar. You know, you can watch this. Jim Crow Joe. The Racist History of Joe Biden. You can listen. It's 14 minutes. I will link to it below. This man is so crazy, you know, and it's not a surprise that he's showing signs of dementia. He doesn't know what reality he is in anymore.
Every single day, someone of prominence on the left, a politician, a cable news host, an entertainment figure, accuses someone on the right of being a racist. Here are typical examples. MSNBC host Chris Matthews said this: "The age of Jim Crow managed to find a new habitat in the 21st century Republican Party." Comedian Seth Meyers told his late-night audience that Republicans traffic in open racism. Tennessee State Representative London Lamar, a black woman, announced that the entire state of Tennessee is racist, period. This was just after she was elected in Tennessee. The left calling the right racist isn't new. It's been going on for decades. Republican presidents Richard Nixon, Ronald Reagan, George Herbert Walker Bush, his son George W. Bush, We're all accused of being racist. And of course, from the left's perspective, racist is essentially Donald Trump's middle name. To call someone a racist is a very serious charge. A racist is a person who believes that one race is inherently superior or inferior to another. It's not intelligence, character, or values that determine an individual's worth. It's his or her skin color. To say that racism is foolish and stupid, not to mention evil, is to understate the case. But according to most Democrats, Republicans are that stupid and that evil. So let's examine some conservative policies to see if they are indeed racist. If they are, then the left has a valid complaint. And if they're not, then the left is lying. The long-standing conservative opposition to affirmative action is a good place to start. It was Democratic President John F. Kennedy who in 1961 first used the term affirmative action. But affirmative action in the way we think of it now wasn't implemented until 1970, during the administration of a Republican president, Richard Nixon. The theory was that, because of historical discrimination, blacks were at a competitive disadvantage to other races and ethnicities. To erase that disadvantage, standards that most blacks presumably couldn't meet had to be lowered. One could make the case that this policy had some utility when it was first put in place. But that was a long time ago. The conservative position is that blacks have repeatedly proven they can compete with anyone without the benefits of lower standards. There are countless examples of black success in every field at every level. The policy is no longer necessary. But the conservative argument goes further. Study after study shows that, in the case of college admissions, affirmative action hurts more blacks than it helps. By lowering admission standards for blacks and some other minority students, colleges set many of these students up for failure. They get placed in schools for which they are not prepared. And high black dropout rates confirm this view. How could it be otherwise? If academically unprepared white students were admitted to Ivy League schools, they too would be set up to fail. Conservatives believe blacks and other minorities are every bit as capable as whites of succeeding as engineers, surgeons, policemen, businessmen, lawyers, and college students. And therefore, lowering standards for blacks is unnecessary as well as insulting. Yet for this belief, conservatives are called racist. The irony, of course, is that those who accuse conservatives of being racist believe blacks and other minorities are not as capable as whites of succeeding and therefore still need affirmative action, almost a half century after it was first implemented. Let's look at another issue where this contrast between conservatives and those who accuse them of being racist is even more starkly drawn: voter ID. Conservatives say America should require every voter to present an ID when voting, just as European countries do to help keep their elections honest. Are all these democracies racist? Of course not. Yet the accusers say that conservatives who support voter ID are racist. Why do they say this? Because, they argue, it's really a ruse to prevent blacks and other minorities from voting, since many of them just aren't capable of acquiring an ID. Can you get more condescending than that? Let's be real. You need an ID to drive, to fly, to buy a beer, even to purchase some cold medicines. Whites can do it, but blacks can't? Tell me again who the racists are? One more example. It's conservatives who push for school choice, which would allow all parents, not just wealthy ones, to decide where their children attend school. Tuition vouchers, charter schools, these are conservative initiatives. Those on the left fight these reforms at every turn. It's the left that doesn't trust minority parents to select an appropriate school for their children. Why aren't the people who keep black children in failing schools the racists? At some point, maybe you'll start asking yourself like I did, who's really obsessed with race, the left or the right? And whose policies really hurt blacks? Maybe it's not who you think it is. I'm Derek Green of Project 21 for Prager University.
I think it's time for Americans to start looking, start researching the truth, and maybe we can get somewhere. Maybe. You know, I have a lot of videos here. Democrats devised Jim Crow laws. It was Democrats. And I have The Inconvenient Truth About the Democratic Party, Dr. Carol Swain, which I'm going to play. I know that it's another 5 minutes, but it's important. And I will link below to another interview with Dr. Carol Swain. Greatest threat to society is diversity, equity, inclusion industry. It's an industry, and they're making an awful lot of money off of racism. And you know what? What I hate about what's going on is the Democrats are pulling us backwards. We were, generation after generation, this whole racism in this country was waning. The Democrats are pulling us backwards. And because we have an awful lot of Americans who do not check out for themselves if the Democrats are actually speaking the truth or not. They don't check it out. They listen to mainstream media, which means that they have given up their independent critical thinking. We're in bad shape because they believe the horse shit they are being fed. And then there are those who don't believe it, but don't do anything about it. So, the party itself has become, it truly feels like living in a psychiatric institution with a whole lot of very crazy people. But I need to stop, I know, because the video is getting too long. We're going to end with this. I'm pleading, I'm begging, Americans, please, start putting the truth first. Stop being cheerleaders for your red or blue team. The truth has to become really important. The truth has to trump, excuse that term, it has to trump everything. But the lies now are becoming so obvious that mainstream media is controlled by the left. It's obvious. And anybody who's listening to mainstream media and thinking that they're being told the truth, that's frightening at this point. Because we don't have that fourth branch holding power accountable. We no longer have investigative journalists. We have propagandists who are lying to all of us. And it is imperative that right now, immediately, you switch it off and you begin to search for the truth. The Democrats, they're the racists. My God, how utterly degrading that now they're boycotting Georgia because the Democrats, they just don't believe that blacks can handle writing down the number of their driver's license. Really?
When you think about racial equality and civil rights, which political party comes to mind? The Republicans or the Democrats? Most people would probably say the Democrats, but this answer is incorrect. Since its founding in 1829, the Democratic Party has fought against every major civil rights initiative and has a long history of discrimination. The Democratic Party defended slavery, started the Civil War, opposed Reconstruction, founded the Ku Klux Klan, imposed segregation, perpetrated lynchings, and fought against the Civil Rights Acts of the 1950s and 1960s. In contrast, the Republican Party was founded in 1854 as an anti-slavery party. Its mission was to stop the spread of slavery into the new Western territories with the aim of abolishing it entirely. This effort, however, was dealt a major blow by the Supreme Court in the 1857 case Dred Scott versus Sandford. The court ruled that slaves aren't citizens, they're property. The 7 justices who voted in favor of slavery, all Democrats. The 2 justices who dissented, both Republicans. The slavery question was, of course, ultimately resolved by a bloody civil war. The commander-in-chief during that war was the first Republican president, Abraham Lincoln, the man who freed the slaves. 6 days after the Confederate Army surrendered, John Wilkes Booth, a Democrat, assassinated President Lincoln. Lincoln's vice president, a Democrat named Andrew Johnson, assumed the presidency. But Johnson adamantly opposed Lincoln's plan to integrate the newly freed slaves into the South's economic and social order. Johnson and the Democratic Party were unified in their opposition to the 13th Amendment, which abolished slavery, the 14th Amendment, which gave blacks citizenship, and the 15th Amendment, which gave blacks the vote. All 3 passed only because of universal Republican support. During the era of Reconstruction, federal troops stationed in the South helped secure rights for the newly freed slaves. Hundreds of black men were elected to Southern state legislatures as Republicans, and 22 black Republicans served in the U.S. Congress by 1900. The Democrats did not elect a black man to Congress until 1935. But after Reconstruction ended, when the federal troops went home, Democrats roared back into power in the South. They quickly reestablished white supremacy across the region with measures like black codes, laws that restricted the ability of blacks to own property and run businesses, and they imposed poll taxes and literacy tests used to subvert black citizens' right to vote. And how was all of this enforced? By terror, much of it instigated by the Ku Klux Klan, founded by a Democrat, Nathan Bedford Forrest. As historian Eric Foner, himself a Democrat, notes, in effect, the Klan was a military force serving the interests of the Democratic Party. President Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, shared many views with the Klan. He resegregated many federal agencies and even screened the first movie ever played at the White House, the racist film, The Birth of a Nation, originally entitled The Klansman. A few decades later, the only serious congressional opposition to the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 came from Democrats. 80% of Republicans in Congress supported the bill, less than 70% of Democrats did. Democratic senators filibustered the bill for 75 days until Republicans mustered the few extra votes needed to break the logjam. And when all of their efforts to enslave blacks, keep them enslaved, and then keep them from voting had failed, the Democrats came up with a new strategy. If black people are going to vote, they might as well vote for Democrats. As President Lyndon Johnson was purported to have said about the Civil Rights Act, I'll have them voting Democrat for 200 years. So now, the Democratic Party prospers on the votes of the very people it has spent much of its history oppressing. Democrats falsely claim that the Republican Party is the villain, when in reality, it's the failed policies of the Democratic Party that have kept blacks down. Massive government welfare has decimated the black family. Opposition to school choice has kept them trapped in failing schools. Politically correct policing has left black neighborhoods defenseless against violent crime. So when you think about racial equality and civil rights, Which political party should come to mind? I'm Carol Swain, Professor of Political Science and Law at Vanderbilt University for Prager University.
It's time. All Americans, they need to make a decision. Are you going to continue with the lie, or are you going to search the truth? That I honestly never believed or never imagined that I would be living this time. But I am. And the truth is truly the only recourse that we have to gain any sanity in this country. When you have the majority of your people who just are in partnership with the liars because they're accepting all of the lies, well, this is what you become. And this is who your leaders are. This is who you cheerlead for. Do you have any integrity whatsoever?